What's the most important thing that most of us don't know about the universe that we should?
For me, it's the greatest gift that modern astrophysics has given civilization. In 1957, a research paper was published, including a leading female scientist, by the way, who's under-celebrated. Her name was Margaret Burbidge. They published a paper demonstrating that the atoms in your body, the nitrogen, the iron, the carbon, that all of this are traceable to cosmic crucibles deep in the centers of stars. It manufactures them by thermonuclear fusion. The star explodes, scatters that enrichment into gas clouds that make the next generation of stars systems, such as we. So it's not like you're out in the universe looking up and you say, yeah, I'm alive in this universe, but I feel small. No, the universe is alive within you, and you should feel large. That revelation that we are not poetically, but literally stardust, borders on the spiritual. And I think everyone, it is their duty to know that.
People are afraid of microwaves.
It's not that they're afraid of microwaves, that they're afraid of things they don't understand. Microwaves, this is a World War II attempt to communicate using microwaves. And they found out some guy's chocolate bar melted in the microwave field. And they said, what happened there? And they did some more tests. And of course, the water molecule and other molecules common in food respond to microwaves. It vibrates them ferociously. And so you put food in a microwave cavity, the water content of the food vibrates, friction cooks the food.
So you don't have to worry about it. It's not doing anything to it. It's not sucking any nutrients out or adding any nuclear radiation.
Correct.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with radiation in the normal sense, other than electromagnetic radiation. We tend to use radiation in the context of stuff that would hurt you. So that would be radiation of high enough energy to hurt you, and microwaves are not in that category. A lot of people want to know what happens after they die. You put together all scientific evidence, biological and physics and thermodynamic. You have no existence after you die. You can believe what you want in a country where we have protection of religious expression, but if you want to ask science what science says about it, you go into a state of non-existence. You can say, well, why is that? What's that like? I'll tell you exactly what it's like. This is what it was like before you were born. You're not asking yourself, what was it like before I was born? I had to have some existence. You didn't. You have no existence. A state of non-existence before you were born. So I'm not given reason to think that your state of non-existence in death differs in any fundamental way from your state of non-existence before you're born, giving that much more meaning to what it is you can and should do while you're alive in this world. If time zones were divided evenly, which they're not, because they're divided politically, culturally, they'd be 15 degrees wide. If you do the math, 15 degrees times 24 time zones gets you 360 degrees. Now, you may have noticed, if you look at a globe, that the lines of longitude that separate out, as you get near the poles, they come closer together. Ooh. So you don't have to travel as far to go from one time zone to the next, because they get narrower and narrower. As you get near the North Pole, all lines converge to one point. So the question is, what time is it on the North Pole?
No time or all time, right?
That's as good an answer as any.
Nice.
It is all time on the North Pole.
Why is the sky blue?
We have an atmosphere. It's composed primarily of nitrogen. Light comes from the sun. People say the sun is yellow. It's white. You've seen the sun in the middle of the day? It's white.
It is white.
That's the proper color of the sun. You may remember that white light is composed of colors. That's how you get a rainbow. The way our brain works and the sensors in your retina, you are chemically, with the chemicals in your retina, splitting that red light into combinations of red, green, and blue. White light comes down from the sun. The particles in the atmosphere, some of them are about the same size as the wavelength of blue light. If you have a particle and light, and there's a particle the same size as that light, it'll reflect or scatter, and so that light doesn't make it straight through. It sends in every other direction. The light from the sun selectively has the blue removed on its way down to Earth's surface. And the blue scatters into the air, and you have a blue sky. William Herschel discovers planet Uranus by accident. This is after Newton's laws of gravity are published. So now we're tracking the orbit of Uranus. This is not following Newton's laws. It's got some deviation. So maybe we found the distance limit over which Newton's laws would apply. That'd be interesting. But other people said Newton was so badass, it must work, even there. So instead of suggesting that his law was failing, clever people said maybe his law applies. But there's yet another planet out there that we've yet to discover whose gravity is tugging on it, and we did not include that in our calculations. So let's do the math. And those calculations were done, and they were published, and an observatory in Germany got hold of those calculations, and they looked in the exact spot of the sky that the calculation said Neptune was waiting to be discovered right there. It was a triumph of Newton's laws. We launched a spacecraft 7 years ago from Earth, a moving platform, towards the asteroid Bennu, a moving target. We arrive there. It does a touch and go, grabbing material on that touch. It packs it into a capsule. That space probe continues, intersects Earth, deploys the capsule such that on the rotating Earth, it lands within a zone in the Utah desert. And that spacecraft continues on to another asteroid.
And that's what it is programmed to do. It's behaving as we intended for
It's
it.
called science. As a matter of fact, it is rocket science. But we did this. We pulled this off. Yet there are people walking among us saying, I don't believe science. I don't trust science. Do you see what it is we do? Do you have any understanding of what this takes?
You've seen that thing on Jupiter, that storm that never quits. Isn't it suspicious to you that a storm there could go on for 350 years without a break, and we never have storms that go on for 350 years without a break?
So, first of all, when we have storms, it's in our atmosphere. We rotate once a day, and so that rotation creates what we call a Coriolis force. The Coriolis force is heightened if you spin faster. So what is Jupiter? It's 1,000 times bigger than Earth. It's mostly gas, and it rotates once in about 10 hours. You want to talk about ferocious Coriolis forces? We have storms that last weeks here, hurricanes that pick up on this little speck we call Earth that has this much atmosphere on it. Go to a planet that rotates twice as fast, is 10 times as wide, 1,000 times the volume, and is mostly gas, and you're complaining that it lasted 300 years?
You are really good.
You don't know about this technology? Yeah, it's a future of stealth. So you think you're just seeing the grass and the tree, but there's a car sitting right there where the light that's behind it goes around it coherently and continues to come towards you. So the material has to be able to know what is behind it so that you think you're seeing what's behind it and it's not there. You are seeing what's behind it, but the path of that light went around the vessel and continued on its way to you. Yeah, what you have is like a solid block and a person is looking at it and you see their eye out the other side. It's really freaky.
How do
that
you
we have as
stop
species.
a gigantic existential
you don't
asteroid?
It's go in and you deflect it.
How?
Oh, by any shove on it that's sideways?
Well, you're president of the United States.
No, well, yeah,
Right?
okay.
There's a massive asteroid. It's going to crash into the world.
Yes, we have engineering plans for deflecting asteroids, and there are multiple ways to do it. You can have a gravitational tug, where you can have a spacecraft that sits just ahead of it, and the two of them will want to drift towards one another, but you take the spacecraft and put a little retro rocket, and if you get this early enough, 1 centimeter per second, tiniest amount will accumulate over time, and you just have to make it so that it overshoots Earth or undershoots Earth compared to the original path. Your rainiest places on Earth are at the equator. That's where you get the Amazon rainforest. And your driest places on Earth are at 30 degrees north and 30 degrees south, because these cylindrical movements of air have descending air there. So the Mojave Desert, the Sahara Desert, the Gobi Desert, they're all around 30 degrees north latitude. So we live on the surface of the Earth where there are forces operating that are so much bigger than us. We don't even think about it. India would be a desert because it's right in that zone were it not for the seasonal monsoons. It doesn't rain much in India except when it's monsoon season. So the monsoon is sort of the exception to what would otherwise happen there. And that's why everyone loves the monsoon. They hate it, but they love it. Do you know about Santa's reindeer? Do you know about them?
Sure, I know very much about them.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you know that...
The caribou.
Yes, well, yeah, caribou, correct.
Yeah.
And, well, you can domesticate the caribou. And when you do, then both the boys and the girls have antlers.
Well, that's just the fact of all caribou.
Oh, all caribou, excuse
Yeah.
me. Good. But sorry, the domesticated ones are called reindeer. They're derived from the caribou, correct. So now watch what happens. So, as you may know, the male deer lose their antlers in late October, early November. The female don't. So all that means is all 8 of Santa's reindeer are female, which means Rudolph has been misgendered.
Interesting. Do you know where the myth of Santa's reindeer flying comes from?
I think it's from mushrooms, isn't it?
Yeah, Amanita muscaria mushroom, which
Yeah.
looks like Santa Claus.
Yeah, with the red and white
And they
dots.
love those things. They love the Amanita muscaria mushroom to the point where when people are doing mushroom ceremonies and they go outside to urinate,
Oh, to drink the pee.
caribou will knock you over to get to your urine.
I don't know how many people know this, but that some infinities are bigger than others. Not all infinities are the same size.
But if it's infinity, then it's infinity. It's infinite. What is no?
Okay. Don't you remember when you were a kid? They said, what's the biggest number you know? 1,000,000. Well, there's 1,000,001.
Right.
Okay, how about a billion? Well, there's 1,000,001. The annoying kid
Right.
always added 1 to it. Okay, how about infinity? Well, infinity and 1.
Right.
Okay, well, it turns out infinity and 1 and infinity are the same number. So, for example, the number of counting numbers, so 1, 2, 3, up to infinity, the numbers you would use to count things, that's infinite. The number of irrational numbers, so the numbers that you cannot represent as a fraction, there are more of those than there are counting numbers. So these are orders of infinity. infinity. Then there are more transcendental numbers than there are irrational numbers.
What's a transcendental number?
So that's a number that you'll never find as a solution to an algebraic equation. So pi is a transcendental number, e is a transcendental. These are magic numbers that show up in mathematics. There's like an even bigger infinity of those than there is of these other two classes of numbers. All our flags are either down or faded beyond recognition on the moon. China is making a flag with threads made from the rock called basalt. They're making threads out of rock. When they deploy their flag, it will be good for 1 billion years, as long as the rocks are good.
And it'll cost $5.
Do you realize if you took Earth with all of its mountains, valleys, and hills and shrunk it down to the size of a cue ball, it would be smoother than any cue ball ever machined? The distance between the lowest point on Earth's surface and the highest point on Earth's surface is 11 miles. That is less than the length of Manhattan, yet we are 8,000 miles in diameter. If you were a cosmic giant and you came up to Earth and you rubbed your finger over Earth's surface, it would feel as smooth as a cue ball to you. Planet Uranus is discovered. Within a few years, a brand new element is discovered. Turns out to be unstable. We would use the term radioactive later on, but they named that after the new planet that was discovered, element uranium. 100 years after that, we discover another planet, we name it Neptune. The next element in the periodic table heavier than uranium, now number 93, was not yet named and not yet discovered till just after that planet. So they named that after the next planet, and that would be Neptunium. And there's element 94, not yet discovered, waiting its turn. The object formerly known as a planet called Pluto was discovered in 1930. Shortly after that, we discover element 94. It's named after the 9th planet, Plutonium. So the periodic table preserves uranium, neptunium, and plutonium in sequence, with Pluto, an element named on false pretense. Do you know that planet-wide greenhouse effect was first discovered on Venus? Venus has a really bad greenhouse effect. It's 900 degrees Fahrenheit on Venus. And I did the math. Venus is saw it. You could take a 16-inch pepperoni pizza, put it on the windowsill, and it will cook in 9 seconds. That's hot.
What's the most distant star you can see with the naked eye?
So that's an interesting question. I can answer that 2 ways. So one of them is the most distant thing you can see with the naked eye is our nearest red-blooded galaxy, the Andromeda Galaxy. For the longest while, until the early 1920s, it was called the Andromeda Nebula. It was just this fuzzy thing in the night sky among the stars that trace out the constellation Andromeda. So we named it after Andromeda. And then with better and better telescopes, wait a minute, this thing is composed of stars. Wait a minute, this thing is far away. Wait a minute, this is an entire other galaxy. It's not just a fuzzy thing in the Milky Way, it's another Milky Way. Well, how far away is it? It was not close like the stars we see in the night sky. This is outside of our entire galaxy. The stars you see in the night sky are tens, hundreds, a few, or thousands of light years away. The Andromeda Galaxy is 2 million light years away. And you can see that with the naked eye.
What's inside a black hole?
Equations tell us what's in a black hole, but we've never tested this, just so you know. It tells us that within a black hole, a whole new space-time can open up in the future history of this universe. By that reasoning, we, in this universe, may be the other side of a black hole that lives in somebody else's universe. So that is perhaps the most intriguing part of the equations that give us black holes. We discovered plutonium in 1930. It is weaponized, turned into a bomb, and deployed 15 years later. That is the pace of what's going on at the time. The 2 bombs was a uranium bomb and a plutonium bomb. We knew uranium would work. We were not sure about plutonium. It was new boy on the block. And so that's what was tested at, famously now portrayed in the film Oppenheimer. They tested the plutonium bomb, not the uranium bomb. That's the one that then was dropped on Nagasaki. Point is, between 1930 and 1960, we cracked the atom, weaponized the atom, break the sound barrier, go into space. Oh my gosh, is there anything about 1960 that would be recognizable to anyone from 1930? I think not.
Why can't we take the salt out of the water?
You can, it just takes energy. You can do it.
But why hasn't that been being done on
You can,
large
you have to
scale?
ask, who's paying for the energy? Where are you getting the energy from? It's an energy thing.
But I would think that would be very valuable. I mean, think about how many people buy
It's not
bottles of
valuable
water.
enough yet. That's the point.
Well, is it that?
It's pure.
or is
It's
it
just money. It's just money. You can ask, what does it cost to ship half pint of water from Fiji? Okay, whatever the hell is the square bottle that you buy in Fiji water? Is it Fiji, right?
Yeah.
Fiji water. What does it cost to bottle that in Fiji, ship it here, relative to desalinating the ocean? It's cheaper to ship, like to Fiji. There'll be a day when that's not the case. And future wars are going to be fought over who has access to fresh water. Your weight is not only how many molecules you have in you.
It's the density.
It's also what's the force of gravity operating on you. So you'll weigh more, but you won't look heavier. You'll just be heavier.
So my mass will be the same.
No, mass will be the same, correct. But your weight can be less or more, depending on what planet you're on. In fact, it's less or more on Earth. If you go to the equator and the equator's spinning, at the equator you're moving 1,000 miles an hour. You weigh less on the equator than you do here in New York City. You weigh less on a mountaintop than you do in a cave.
We should go to the equator, guys.
There was a day when there were 7 known planets, and the word planet had an unambiguous definition, clear and simple, defined by the ancient Greeks, planetes, meaning wanderers. There were 7 objects in the sky that would move against the background sky. And it's those 7 names drawn from Roman and Norse mythologies that landed as the 7 names for the days of the week. There's Saturdays after Saturn, Sundays named after the sun, yes, Monday, the moon, this sort of thing. There you go. For a couple of thousand years, you get to Copernicus in 1543. He says, well, maybe the sun is in the middle of all this. And if we are, then Earth goes around the sun like these other things we had been calling a planet, so maybe Earth is a planet. And so overnight, with the publication of De Revolutionibus, 1543, Nicholas Copernicus, Polish astronomer and mathematician, overnight practically, we went from 7 planets down to 5 because we lost the sun and we lost the moon. As we go around the sun, the moon goes around Earth, and we gained the Earth. We went from 7 down to 5 up to 6. And there it was. Humans are one of the few mammals, maybe one of the few animals at all, that's comfortable just sleeping on our back. You've never seen a horse asleep on its back. Most mammals just do not sleep on their back. And we sleep at night. I'm asleep on my back at night, and then I wake up. I look it up. I look at the stars. Because the moon was here last night, but now it's there tonight. And there's other brighter ones, the planets, and they moved. You gotta be curious. You have to be. And I bet this imbued our species with a sense of curiosity for what is above our head that a beetle could never have, because a beetle's only looking down. Galileo perfects the telescope. He looks up and says, whoa, I see craters, mountains, valleys on the moon. The sun has spots. Venus goes through phases. This became the corpus of evidence for Earth going around the sun in support of Copernicus' idea that Earth went around the sun. What was the second thing he did with his telescope? He contacted the Doge of Venice, invited him to the clock tower, and said, look at what this instrument can do for you as we look out into the lagoon. You can identify a ship's intentions, friend or foe, by its flag 10 times farther away than you can with the unaided eye. Venice bought a boatload of these telescopes in the service of their military defense. And this was a source of money to Galileo. Now he could go look at the universe. This has been a two-way street ever since people have looked up. You have never met someone at a place unless it was also at a time. And you have never met someone at a time unless it was also at a place. We know intuitively that we need 4 dimensions to localize someone to meet up with them. Only 2 dimensions if you don't have tall buildings. You have tall buildings, you need the 3rd dimension. So you don't say, I'll meet you at the 20th floor of 721 Park Avenue. What time? Full 4 dimensions going on there. Just I want to convince you we live in a 4-dimensional world for that reason. Continental drift. This is a fascinating bit of history here. There's someone who looked at the shape of South America and the shape of Africa on a map and said, wait, that looks like it fits. But there's a whole ocean between them. Is there a puzzle? Did these land masses once connect? Let's test this. Well, what might you do? You say, if they once connected, might there be fossils in common on both shores, even though there's an ocean between them? So you look, the fossils match, and other things start matching, but how the hell is land gonna move on a solid surface? No one had any idea about this. That notion that a continent would move when no one had a mechanism to make it happen, it just sort of stayed there on the shelf. The consensus was not ready to go there. Right. And so what happens after the Second World War? We're mapping the bottom of the Atlantic, so the subs know where to hide and where to go. In the center of the Atlantic, there's a ridge. There's a split in the middle of the Atlantic. Once that was uncovered and revealed, declassified and published, we had the mechanism and all the data fit. If you needed more reasons to think that Columbus was let me add one to it. On his 3rd voyage, he's got to get back to Spain. He doesn't have enough food for his crew. So he asks the natives, would you please give us some of your stock? Now, this group of natives only makes exactly the amount of food they need to tie to the next crop. So they said no. Columbus knew that 1 week hence, there was going to be a total lunar eclipse where the moon in its orbit around Earth enters Earth's shadow and disappears. But the geometry is such that sunlight passes around Earth through Earth's atmosphere and takes on sunset colors that leach into Earth's shadow, giving the moon a deep red amber hue. He says to the natives, if you do not give us food, my God will make the moon disappear and it will turn blood red. You have 1 week to comply. Sure enough, right on cue, the moon begins to disappear. And within seconds of this beginning, they bring him all the resources he wants. We don't know what happened back at the island, whether the people survived the winter. Cloning Neanderthal, because they found some tissue of Neanderthal in the ice, they shouldn't do it. I don't want Neanderthal walking around. No siree. You know why? Because we kill each other for less. We kill other members of exactly our own species for less. You're gonna bring up something that's almost human but not, Neanderthal, and we're pretty sure that our cognitive abilities are greater than that of Neanderthal. How are we gonna treat him? I don't trust us. That's why you shouldn't clone him, because I don't trust the behavior of human beings. When they invented cars, cars were killing people in the street because people didn't know how to cross the street. They didn't know where to cross the street. People don't know how to stop the cars. They say, well, cars are actually a pretty useful thing. Do we ban cars? No, we make stoplights. People are crossing, well, we make crosswalks. Oh, let's put lanes so that cars don't hit each other. Let's make airbags so that you don't fly through the windshield. There are ways around problems if you value the thing that it is that you want to do. We didn't cancel cars. We got really innovative about how to keep them. Consider, the smartest chimp does what our toddlers can do. And there's no way you will explain to a chimp, I'll have dinner ready at 6:30, you pick up some juice on the way home. The simplest human thoughts are inconceivable to a chimp, and their talents are about what our toddlers can do. So let's get back to this 1% smarter alien that we've discovered. Corresponding this analogy, we now say, what would we look like to them? Well, they would roll Stephen Hawking forward after combing the human species, and they'd say, this one is slightly smarter than the rest because he can do astrophysics calculations in his head like little Timmy over here, who just came home from preschool. Oh, Timmy, you just composed 3 sonnets. Isn't that cute? Let's put it up on the refrigerator door. Oh, you just derived the fundamental law of calculus. Isn't that cute? Put it up on the refrigerator. Their simplest thoughts would transcend our deepest thoughts. This is why the attacks on September 11th worked, because we had a policy that if someone wants to hijack a plane, you follow their instructions. You do not deny them their requests, because the assumption was that if you deny their requests, they will start harming people. And if you follow their requests, it will delay when they harm them, if they harm them at all, and maybe everyone will end up safe. It was not in the game plan that they would crash the plane on purpose. So September 12th, you will never again be able to do that to an American plane. Forget the extra X-rays that we're doing. A pilot will never relinquish the cockpit ever again, no matter who they're torturing in the back of the plane, no matter what they're doing, even if they're shooting people one by one, because the plane going down takes everybody out. The only thing that you consume that was never once alive is sort of basically milk and honey. Everything else was once alive. You are killing. So now imagine a civilization from another planet that is entirely energized by photosynthesis. Maybe they have what we would call an animal, but their entire skin photosynthesizes. So all living creatures on that planet consume sunlight from their home star. And so they say, I want to explore the galaxy. And so they build a spaceship and they come to Earth. And what do they see? Humans and other animals killing to survive, inventing means of mass murder of fellow other life forms on their planet just to survive. They would consider us astonishingly barbaric for having done so. And I don't think they would be interested in us.
If they really are using photosynthesis, they're plant-based creatures, they're probably going to be so tired all the time, they're not going to have the will to travel through the universe.
You are confusing the vegetarian with the plant life.
How will the universe end, and what will there be afterwards?
We have several ideas for how it will end. One, it'll just continue to expand forever as the temperature descends asymptotically towards absolute zero, and all phenomena and all processes will cease. All stars will burn out. They will shut off in the night sky one by one. Universe will be cold and dark. But if the expansion of the universe, which is rapid and accelerating, is real and continues, that'll take us to the Big Rip, which we may have talked about on my last visit. That terrifies me, because if the fabric of the universe stretches faster than the material substance can sustain it, then it rips into the, You ever wonder why clouds are just up there? I have a pocket of air it has some humidity level in it. Let's say it's 50% humid. That humidity that is reported is actually a relative humidity. What that means is that is 50% relative to how much it could carry at that temperature. So watch. As the blob of air gets heated and rises, the temperature drops. Colder air can hold less humidity than warmer air. So the relative humidity goes up. It starts at 50 in this example, then it goes to 60, then to 70, then to 80. It is ascending. 80, 90. Bada bing! You reach 100% and boom, you have a cloud. That's why the cloud is up there and not down here.
Now I know how clouds are born.
Suppose there's no wind and you got like, let's say 70% humidity. The sun sets, temperature drops. Air temperature drops.
Starts to cool.
Right here, gets to 100%. What just happened?
We made a cloud.
Where did we make the cloud? We have a new word for that kind of cloud.
Do we really?
Yes.
What?
Fog.
Was Galileo treated as a kind of a devil, in a sense?
The simple story is he makes these discoveries. They conflict with the teachings of the Catholic Church. They put him on trial. They find him guilty of saying that Earth goes around the sun and not vice versa. And then they put him under house arrest. What they don't tell you, or they would tell you if you read a longer biography about him, is that he actually made fun of the Pope. Public fun of the Pope. He wrote a book in Italian, not in Latin, which is the academic language of the day, in Italian, which means the local people can read it. And in it, he invents a conversation between a simpleton and someone who is wise of the ways of the universe. If you track the statements of the simpleton, they're all statements that have come by official decree from the Catholic Church. So he's really a pompous a-hole, basically. I'll make a prediction so I can be made a fool of by people who come after me, that by 2050, 100% of the cars in the road will be self-driving electric. And you go say, oh, how can you say that? No, we're not on that pace. Look what happened then. What would you have said in 1900 when you see this newfangled automobile? If I told you in 10 years you won't find a horse, you'll say, no, I don't believe you. Things can't change that fast, but they did. Self-driving electric can go 90 miles an hour, one car length from the car in front of it. And it's not drunk. It's not putting on makeup. It's not texting. This past year, we lost 40,000 people to automobile accidents, pedestrians and drivers. 40,000 people. We just live with that. That's an entire Vietnam's worth of dead Americans every year. With the power of a bow and arrow, you could kill another human being without actually looking them in the eyes. And the conclusion was, that's the end of bravery. And so I thought about this, whoa. Any tool where you can kill at a distance, that's cowardly on some level. And the progress of military conflict has been, how far away can you kill at a distance? Or missiles, that's intercontinental ballistic missile. Let me kill a whole city, and I'm not even within 5,000 miles of the city. The fact that a robot is wielding a gun, is that any different from a guided missile? I don't think so.
What would happen if the Earth stopped rotating for a second?
Oh, yeah, that would be disastrous. Because right now, here in New York, you can calculate at our latitude, we are all moving with the Earth at 800 miles an hour, due east, as Earth is rotating. If you stopped Earth and you weren't seatbelt buckled to the Earth, you would fall over and roll 800 miles an hour due east. It would kill everyone on Earth. People would be flying out of windows, and that would just be a bad day on Earth. If somehow we all slowed down, so anything not bolted to the Earth would fly due east, 800 miles an hour. That's what happens to you in a car if you hit a brick wall and you're not wearing a seatbelt. You keep going. That's why you get hurt in those kinds of accidents. But if somehow we all slowed down with the Earth, then okay, that's fine. I mean, people think, well, somehow we'll be weightless or we'll lose our atmosphere. No, it's just that you'll have really long days. If you dug a hole from the United States, because that's where I live, where would you come out on the other side? Everyone says you dig a hole all the way to China.
That's always the case.
That's how we say
dig a hole to China
here in the United States.
That's right.
However, China is not where you will land if you dig a hole through the center of the Earth. Because if you dig a hole through the center and you start in the northern hemisphere, you have to end up in the
southern hemisphere.
In the southern hemisphere.
Right.
If you start in the western hemisphere, you got to end up in the
eastern hemisphere.
That's how the geometry works.
Is that because it's a ball?
It's a ball.
Right.
All right. If you dug that hole from the United States, you would end up in the Indian Ocean. Okay?
So basically,
the South Indian Ocean.
You just flood the United States.
Yeah,
that's really what you did.
One reason why we should go into space is because you know the dinosaurs would have if they could have. 65 million years ago, right here, the Yucatan Peninsula, a rock the size of Mount Everest slammed into Earth, and it changed the climate of the world, rendering 70% of all species extinct. And the dinosaurs don't have opposable thumbs. They didn't have a space program. I'm thinking if they did, they would have deflected that asteroid. Every now and then in my Twitter stream, I just imagine a conversation with an alien. So I so want to meet the aliens. I don't want to be the laughing stock among the galaxy's aliens. To be a species intelligent enough to have a space program, to have actually gone into space, yet to go extinct because an asteroid came and we couldn't mobilize and figure out how to deflect it. We'd be the laughing stock of species in the galaxy, the extinct humans. Here on Earth, we have a magnetic field. Not very strong, but we have one. And when dangerous charged particles come from the sun, we call it the solar wind, they see Earth's magnetic field and then they channel themselves away and funnel in at the poles. And they collide with our atmosphere and render it aglow, causing the aurora. So when we see the aurora, that's the atmosphere and our magnetic field shielding us from harmful radiation. It wasn't soldiers who invented the catapult. It was some engineer in the back room who said, hey, I can do this. And then military leaders said, let's take it. For physics, they made the bomb, and the chemists made the napalm, and the biologists might weaponize anthrax. What does the astrophysicist do? I care about things like dim things that I'll use multispectral imaging to detect. I care about sending moving spacecraft to intersect moving objects in space. I care about navigation, where I am on the sky and where I am on Earth.
And all of that can be used by the military.
All of that. Yeah. Around a half of all stars that have names in the night sky have Arabic names. Because in the golden age of Islam, 1,000 years ago, navigation was a big deal. And they navigated using astrolabes. Astrolabes are gorgeous. They're works of art. They're brass, they're etched. There are different discs that you can replace depending on where you are on Earth to know where you are more accurately. This is all navigation. First person to live forever is already alive. What enables that sentence to possibly be true is that get someone who's just born today. So we're working on the genome, we're isolating the aging gene, whatever that is. That newborn person, when they're 20, take this potion and they can now live to be 150. That would be a major advance on our longevity. By the time they're 40, we've improved the potion, now they can live to 300. By the time they're 60, now they can live to 500. By the time they're 80, now they can live to 1,000. By the time they're 100, they can live for 1,000,000 years. That's the notion, that we'll make incremental improvements that will continue to accrue for the person who's just born today. One of two things has to happen. Either we colonize other planets or you stop making babies. Because if you don't die and you keep making babies, that ups the population growth rate. So you need other planets. If you're not smart enough to have technology to get to other planets, living forever is not a good idea. Consider that Muslims, part of the rituals of being a Muslim is you're cleaning your hands and your feet and your ears and your nose. And there's a cleansing daily. But just think about this. Back then, nobody's showering every day. People's some funky times, okay? There's some people don't shower every day today, but you could. In the United States, we probably take more showers than anybody else in the world from the research I've done on that. But point is, if a disease comes through and it comes from contact or some other thing because you're dirty, you get sick and the Muslims don't. Oh my gosh, and you're Christian and they're Muslims? You're saying they put a hex on me. These heathens.
Will we ever be able to teleport? Is this going to ever be possible?
Teleport. So take your body, turn it into energy, beam it over here and reassemble it. I think a wormhole between those 2 points will come sooner than teleporting.
In our lifetime?
And a wormhole is just great. You just step through. You don't have to dematerialize and rematerialize. A wormhole is you're over here and you want to get here during the TV commercial. You bend space, you cut a hole through there, pop out, and there you are, and you got to cross the galaxy in seconds.
Do you think?
I once tweeted, I was in like Charlotte Airport or somewhere where I had to go from big plane to a little plane. It was like miles through the airport. And I tweeted, I tried to be clever. I said, gee, I can't wait till we have wormholes so that all gates will be adjacent to one another. And then someone tweeted back and said, Dr. Tyson, the day we have wormholes, you won't need airports. Oh! The people who say they left their body, they come above and they see themselves down there on the bed. So what they decided to do is for people who are about to die, they would write a message facing upwards to the ceiling above the bed. So if a person goes above their bed and looks down, they'd be able to read the message. So when they rejoin their body, they should then tell us what message they saw. That's never happened. It's just... Now, I have a cousin, when her father died, was alone with him in the room, and he's in an open casket. She tells me of a conversation she had with her dead father. And I said, was it in your mind? No, he sat up. I said, what was the conversation? And she said, well, he said, don't worry about him. He's in a better place. This is her eyewitness testimony. I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'm just saying it's not scientifically useful. I told her, next time this happens, ask these questions and not those questions. Don't say, are you happy? No, say, are you wearing clothes? Where are you? What temperature is it? If a dead person sits up and starts talking to me, oh my God. It's 1900. There's the fear of the great catastrophe. In Manhattan, you access it by bridges and tunnels. There were horses. Horses do what they do, they poop. The poop goes in the street. You don't take it to the horse bathroom, it's in the street. And the people's whole job was to clean up the manure. Now what do you do with it? You bring it to another place and it makes a pile. Then somebody else comes in with multiple horse-drawn carriages to haul the manure out of the island. But those horses that are hauling the manure, they are pooping. So if you run the arithmetic on this, imagine the manure catastrophe. And it attracted flies. There were no indoor supermarkets back then. Most of food was sold by street carts. So the flies were everywhere. And so there was a lot of discussion about what to do about flies. So they said, let's put something in the feed so that when it comes out as poop, the flies will not be attracted to it. Because that was one of the health issues. How do you get rid of the flies if you're not going to get rid of the poop? Then another one was, what can we feed the horse to reduce the amount of poop that comes out the other side? The actual solution was the car. You hold the same endowed chair that Isaac Newton did. I'm just wondering if we had some way to communicate through time with him and tell him about what life is like today. Are there any questions, any problems you might want to hand him to solve?
Is the solar system stable, and what happens to a star that cannot support itself against its own gravity?
So you're thinking if Newton saw those questions, he might give us deeper insights into black holes. I'd be curious. What's your favorite food? For me, it's pizza. Actually, New York pizza.
Oysters.
Oysters. A little slippery for me, but that's cool. Okay, how about your favorite drink?
Pims.
Pims. Ooh. I like pina coladas myself, but if it's not alcoholic, I would do a milkshake. Okay, last question. What's your favorite equation? I know you've got one.
The equation I discovered relating the entropy of a black hole to the area of its horizon, S equals A/4.
How many people get to say their favorite equation is one they came up with? But I just want to settle once and for all, whether a glass is half empty or half full. If you are adding water to the glass and it gets halfway, it's half full. If you are drinking from the glass and it's halfway, then it's half empty. The rate of change of what's in the glass. Half full, half empty.
Okay.
That makes, to me, complete sense.
Got it.
If you come upon a glass,
if you
it's
walk
half
up
empty.
to a table. It's half empty if you walk up to a table and
it's evaporating. It's not a joke. It's a literal truth. If you left it there long enough, it'll just become less and less and less, and then you'll have the mineral deposits at the bottom.
Sure.
Full moon, it turns you into a werewolf. Then I was thinking, how come they only turn into a werewolf when they notice the moon? They're not just walking around and just turn into werewolf and then realize the moon is. So somehow they gotta notice the moon. And then the moon comes out from behind clouds. But the moon was full even when it's behind the clouds. It's full when you're in your basement. So maybe it's the light. They gotta see the light. Well, the moon reflects sunlight. So if the moon turns you into a werewolf, so should the sun.
There can be no time travel because so far, no one from the future has ever shown up and said, hi.
There's no time travel to the past because the future person would then be coming to the past. We can travel into the future, however. Our understanding of that has been around since 1905, and it's Einstein's special theory of relativity. If I send you on a spaceship at speeds nearing the speed of light and we watch you, we will see that your clock ticks more slowly than our own. And then you come back. It's the famous twin study. You send out your twin, they can come back. You aged 20 years, your twin would have aged only 10, depending on the exact speed. And so in that way, your twin went into the future. Now, you're right about the past. We don't know yet how to go into the past. There's some peculiar solutions of Einstein's equations that allow past travel, but then you can interact with your life. You're in sort of another place. Because imagine if you could interact with your own life. Prevent your parents from meeting. Then you would never conceive. Then you could have never been sent back in time to prevent your parents from meeting. Do you know how many stars the naked eye can see at night? It's about 3,000 to 4,000.
Oh, really?
Unaided, yeah. Binoculars, it's 100 times that.
Yeah.
Telescopes, it's 1 billion times that. But eyes, 3,000 to 4,000 stars.
Okay.
When it's a full moon out, 300 stars. The moon wreaks havoc on our ability to see the rest of the universe. Our observing schedules with huge telescopes are split according to dark time or bright time. If you have bright time observations, it's the moon is up and you can only look at bright objects in the night sky. The deep universe only comes to us when the moon is not up. The Russians came up with the rocket equation. This is the equation that tells you how much fuel you need to put a payload into orbit. Why does that matter? Because you need fuel to carry the fuel that hasn't burned yet to put the payload in orbit. So for every pound you want to put into orbit, you need much, much more fuel than you'd otherwise think you'd need. And that's why the Saturn V rocket is so tall, and the astronauts and all their payload is just an upper little section. All the rest of that is just controlled bomb. Most Pluto lovers I've met do not know the following 3 facts. 1, our moon has 5 times the mass of Pluto. 2, more than half of Pluto's volume is made of ice. So that if Pluto were where Earth is right now, heat from the sun would evaporate that ice and it would grow a tail. which is no kind of behavior for a planet. Third, Pluto has an orbit that is so elongated that it crosses the orbit of another planet. No. So we finally set up a set of rules and regulations such that Pluto is kicked out of the Planet Club. It's still a dwarf planet, but I think it's happier there. It's one of the biggest dwarf planets. 70% of all men in the United States have jobs that involve driving. So you add it up, there's like truck drivers, cab drivers, forklift drivers, delivery car drivers, FedEx, UPS. This just keeps adding up. And if you're ever driving on a busy freeway, trucks are all over the place. Somebody's driving that truck. The day all driving becomes self-driving trucks and cars, all of those folks are out of work. Mars has a 24-hour day, approximately. It's tipped on its axis. It has polar ice caps, as we still do for now. On Earth, it goes through seasons. We think there's a reservoir of water that was once there on the surface and now frozen as a permafrost. If there's any planet that is terraformable, it would be Mars. It's not widely remembered. Einstein, generally a pacifist, told President Roosevelt, Hitler's working on a bomb. If he captures this energy, that's the end of the world as we know it. We have to get there before him. It was Einstein whose letter to Roosevelt launched the Manhattan Project. Ben Franklin, he was the world's most famous scientist in his day. He's not remembered here as that. He's remembered as a founding father. He invents the lightning rod. What's happening before that? In any city, what's the tallest structure back then? The church is the tallest structure in any city. What is the most susceptible to a lightning strike? The tallest structure. So lightning would be taking out churches left and right. And if you were the other church that wasn't taken out, you had good argument for saying you're worshiping the wrong way. Ben Franklin then invents the lightning rod, which does two things. Dissipates charges that build up under your structure that would otherwise be part of the lightning strike, and it sends them back into the air without the benefit of lightning. So that makes you less susceptible to begin with. And if the lightning strikes, it then directs all of the charges through a metal and not through your house. So Ben Franklin does this, and churches are now no longer destroyed by lightning even if they are hit. And he's accused of heresy, thwarting the will of God. So that's why we have science. It's why the world is less superstitious than it once was. If Van Gogh did not paint the Starry Night, or if Beethoven didn't compose the Ninth Symphony, no one ever born after them is going to do that. Whereas if Einstein wasn't born, somebody or some combination of people would have eventually found relativity. People say the sun is yellow. No, it's not. It's white. If the sun were yellow, just think this through. If the sun were yellow, then in broad daylight, snow would be yellow. But generally it's not, all right? When the sun sets, its light is heavily attenuated by dust in the atmosphere, and in other places it could be pollution or pollen. But these particles in the air scatter blue light out of the sun into the rest of the sky, turning the sky blue, and the more blue light it takes out, the more yellow-red the sun looks. And that's why right on the horizon, the sun is its deepest yellow-red it will ever be. And people say, oh, there's our yellow star. No, the sun is white, okay? Ask any photographer, by the way. In fact, to a photographer, the sun is blue. You know what an egg is?
A cell.
No, I was going to be more metaphorical.
Oh, okay. What's an egg? What's an egg?
This is not a biology class here.
I'm sorry.
An egg is a spacesuit for the unborn organism so it can survive in an environment that would otherwise kill it.
Yeah, it is.
Until it can survive, then it no longer needs the spacesuit. The chicken is inside the egg because the outer environment can't live in that environment. So it stays in there until it's ready, then it pops out and it can leave the ship. Can I blow your mind again? As you know, cooking times have to be adjusted on mountaintops because when you boil water, it's not 212 degrees. Depending on the height of the mountain, there's less air pressing down that's preventing it from boiling. The boiling point is not some absolute fact about the water. It has to do with what the air pressure is sitting above it. If you have extremely high air pressure, water has to go to a much higher temperature before it boils. The boiling point of water that's reported in all textbooks is at sea level, at 1 atmospheric pressure. That's how you get 212 degrees. If you start reducing the atmospheric pressure, 205 degrees, 180 degrees.
180 degrees?
No! Yes, and so that's not as hot as 212 degrees, so you gotta cook the food longer. All cooking times are increased. You keep reducing the air pressure. Boiling point keeps dropping. It's 170 degrees, 150, 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. What happens? The ice melts and becomes water. The water evaporates and becomes steam, and all of that's happening at 32 degrees. There is an atmospheric pressure for which water, ice, and steam coexist, and it's called the triple point of water. The next thing I say may be mind-blowing to you. Okay. The tide doesn't actually come in and out. What happens is there is a bulge of water, 2 of them, on opposite sides of the Earth, caused by the sun and the moon, and Earth turns inside that bulge. When we say the water rises and falls tidally, what's happening is we are rotating into the bulge and then out of the bulge.
So the bulge is already there.
It's already there.
And all we kind of do is pass through the bulge.
Pass through, and the water gets high and it gets low.
Why can you skate on ice? Because the edge of the blade is very high pressure on the ice, and it's melting a bead of water. And you're actually gliding on water when you're skating. You're not skating on slippery ice.
Really?
Yes.
I thought you were just cutting the ice with the blade.
Well, so the blade, have you ever seen a sharpened blade? It's not just flat. There's actually a concave cross-section to it. So each edge, the left edge and the right edge, is basically a knife edge. Okay? Not quite as sharp as a knife, but you can feel how it's sharp, so that when you lean on that edge, either your inner edge or outer edge, your entire body weight is being held up on this very narrow surface area of the blade. So the pressure is extreme. It's like, 1,000 pounds per square inch. You don't weigh 1,000 pounds, but you're not skating on a square inch. What makes it so slippery on ice skates is because you're moving on a bead of water that freezes right behind you as you go past.
Is it true that you get more wet when running in the rain than if you walk?
So that's a fun question, and I've thought about that my entire life. If you walk in the rain, the only part of you that's getting wet is the part that's falling directly on top of you, so your shoulders and the top of your head. So you get that area, and you look at the raindrops per minute that's hitting that area and how fast you're walking across the street. You can calculate that and get a total number of raindrops that you hit if you go slowly. Now, if you run, rain is still going to hit you on your head and shoulders, but for not as long.
Right.
But now you have your entire surface area of the front of your body that's running into falling raindrops.
Right.
The periodic table of elements is complete. There are no gaps. And there were gaps in it up until as late as the 1950s. One of the last elements to be discovered was technetium, named tech. You know what the definition of tech is? Human-made.
Wow.
That's why technology is we made it, it's not in nature. Tech means artificial, human-made. That element doesn't exist in nature, so we created it. Nature makes elements up to 94. We have created elements beyond that up to 118. So yeah, there's gaps above 118, but not in the main table that you saw hanging in the front of your chemistry class.
The number is the amount of protons in the
number of protons, correct.
So it's like we have one with 8, we have one with 10, but we can't find the one with 9.
Right, so
we
then
know
we
it's
find
out
the one
there.
with 9.
And that's how you have gaps.
That's how you know that there's a gap. It's a discrete number of protons in the nucleus of these atoms. People say, I don't want to kill animals. I don't have a problem with that. They probably have a humane mousetrap in their basement. They don't want to snap the neck of the mouse. So they capture the mouse. You got to check on it every couple of days because they dry out real quick. So there it is, and they set it loose into the wild, where they have guaranteed it will be swallowed whole by an owl or picked apart by all manner of woodland predators. Average life expectancy of a mouse in the wild is 9 to 18 months. The best thing you can do with a mouse is leave it in your basement. It'll live up to 6 years there. That's how you protect the life. But that's not what they're doing. Meanwhile, the house is made of wood from 50 trees. Each tree every day produces 15 times the mass of the mouse in oxygen. And a tree is home to birds and insects and fungus and squirrels. Who do you think nature cares more about, your mouse or the tree? And you'll say, well, the mouse has a beating heart, tree doesn't. Maybe the tree doesn't need a beating heart. That's your criterion for what's important? If you cut a tree, does it not bleed? Oh, but you're gonna cut them all down, build your house, and save a 1-ounce chubby mouse.
I want to talk a lot about like the chicken or the egg debate.
People are still debating that?
They are.
It's not a debate.
That's what I think too.
No, it's not a debate. It's very clear and simple. The egg came first. It was just laid by a bird that was not a chicken. Now, of course, that compresses hundreds of thousands of years of evolution.
Yes.
But philosophically, there is a bird that you perhaps would not call a chicken, proto-chicken, sure. And then there's a genetic alteration which occurs in every generation, very tiny genetic variations. And the egg that comes out of it, you would say, that's not a proto-chicken, that's a chicken. Any animal that we have ever got to study in more detail than we previously did has shown to be more intelligent than we ever gave it credit for being. And you know who has the biggest brain to body weight ratio of any creature on Earth? Some species of ants. 15% of their body weight is their brain. And it's kind of obvious. Some of them, like the whole front section is their head. In retrospect, it's kind of obvious. And ants are very busy doing some complicated things and we don't know what they're doing.
Especially leafcutter ants.
They're busy, carpenter ants, leaf-cutting ants, and cross over into termite land. They're busy building stuff.
And they work in communication with each other
And they
somehow.
communicate. And to say, well, we're at the top, really? Earth plows through 200-300 tons of meteors a day. This is debris that is in the way as we move in our orbit. By the way, this includes all the shooting stars you see at night. You add all those up. A couple of hundred tons a day as we orbit the sun. Ask, how much total mass is there that we could sweep up? And compare that to the mass of Earth itself. If you do that, it is a mere pittance of our current total mass. So you can declare that we dominate the mass of our zone. Pluto does not. You can calculate how much mass is there for Pluto to interact with. It's factors greater than the mass of Pluto itself. Santa can't be real because if you add up how many Christians there are in the world and give him 24 hours to deliver gifts, how fast his reindeer would have to move, he would vaporize in the atmosphere.
Can you explain how they measure time? It's an atom that blinks 1 billion times in a certain amount of time, and that equals a second.
Oh,
is that right?
Okay. We can go there. You ready?
Yeah.
The length of a second, up until I think it was early 1960s, was defined by a specific fraction of the duration of the year 1900. And the rotating Earth is a key part of this measurement. Your measure of time is based on the rotation of the Earth and the time it takes Earth to go around the sun. If those things change, you will never know that because that is your yardstick. If your yardstick is changing, you will only know that if you have another yardstick to compare it to. We offloaded the measurement of the duration of a second to atomic vibrations. There's a transition, what we call an electronic transition in the cesium atom, where you can measure the vibrations of that in the laboratory. And the duration of a second was defined, and it has been defined that way for the past 60 years. When we did that, we said, hey, Earth is slowing down. For the first time, we could just measure that. Not only that, earthquakes can change the rotation rate of the Earth, and melting glaciers, because it changes where the mass is on the Earth. It's no different from a skater who's spinning, and then they bring in their arms and they spin faster. They change where their mass was in their rotating body, and it affected the rate at which they rotated. If you have earthquakes, they can shift plates, continental plates, to different parts of where Earth is, affecting our rotation. By a very tiny amount, of course. Migrating animals from north to south, south to north, also affect. But the biggest effect is the tidal sloshing on our shores. And we put in 23, 24 leap seconds since then.
And so as polar ice caps melt and there's more water, we're going to slow down even more.
Yes,
right?
Only because the water that's in the poles, as that melts, it goes back into the ocean, and then that water can move now to the equator. Right. So that's mass going away from the rotation axis. So if you ever see skaters, they bring in their arms, they spin faster. Well, how do they stop spinning? You don't know this, but they return their arms to an outer position. This slows down their rotation. It looks like they're just posing for the photo, but if they didn't do that, they would keep spinning.
Will the Earth ever stop spinning then?
No, so these forces acting on the Earth, 7 to 10 billion years, it's slow. The sun is long dead by now, okay? So this is just a theoretical exercise. The moon is slowing down Earth, and it will do so until we only show one face of Earth to the moon. We did that to the moon. We slowed down the moon's rotation, so it only shows one face to us. That's why there's a near side of the moon and a far side. How much do you weigh in water? Zero. You're neutrally buoyant. So in water, we don't weigh anything. Put a scale in water and stand on it and read it, okay? That's what I'm saying. Okay. So when you don't weigh anything, then structurally, you're not putting yourself at risk. And that's why the largest creature there ever was is a mammal, and it lives in the ocean. It's a whale.
Right.
The blue whale. So when they say, how much does a whale weigh? Right. The answer is 0. They give you a weight. And how do they give you a weight? They take it out of the water, put it on a scale on dry land, and then it weighs, gazillion tons, but that's not the weight that the whale feels as it moves through the ocean. The fastest spaceship we've ever launched, if you aimed it for the closest exoplanet, let's go to Proxima Centauri. It's called Proxima because it's close. It's 4 light years away. Proxima Centauri, right there. Aim your fastest thing we have ever launched, take you 70,000 years. So you got to figure out how to defy your biology or invent a wormhole. And I'm gonna bet on the wormhole. We don't invite China to participate in the International Space Station. They were disinvited. We invited Russia because they're brilliant people in Russia who were working on space. We don't want them to go to our enemies, whoever they were. Bring them with us, then they are our allies. There's no China. What were the reasons? Oh, human rights violations. I have no evidence for this. Someone somewhere said, if we disinvite China, we know they're gonna do
do this on their own. They're going to make their own space station. They're going to put their own people into orbit. They have the resources. Their economy was on tear. They're going to do it. And that'll spook us into redoubling our space efforts because now we have a new adversary to replace the Soviet Union, which is the role they played when we went to the moon. So fast forward 15 years, and what do we have now? China says they want to put astronauts on the moon. Oh, we have the Artemis program, returning to the moon.
What's something you learned recently?
I think I knew this when I was a kid. If you're playing basketball and you're shooting, and you say, oh, that didn't go in, oh my gosh, well, the rim, they should maybe make the rim a little bigger. I could score more often. Do you realize 2 basketballs can fit exactly side by side through the opening of a basketball hoop? It's not a cosmically mind-blowing moment, but that gives you perspective next time you watch a basketball game. It's how these guys can fly from the foul line in an airborne slam dunk and not miss because the area of this opening is 4 times as large as the ball itself. Not that that's easy to accomplish, but knowing this, you realize how much easier it is to score than you might have otherwise thought. And I got in big trouble one time. December 25th, I tweet, on this day, long ago, a child was born who by the age of 30 would transform civilization. Happy birthday, Isaac Newton. Born 1642. Boy, that pissed off a lot of people. It pissed off some people, and it's odd because Isaac Newton was actually born, on that calendar, he was actually born on that date. But no one knows what day Jesus was born, right? So people are angry with me for saying something true.
Are you scientific with the facts, or do you go with myths like the tooth fairy?
No, when their teeth start coming out, right? What do you do? So we're not gonna lie to them because the universe is amazing enough to have to invent stuff just to keep kids entertained. So what we said was, we heard that if you put your tooth under the pillow, tooth fairy comes. We're not sure, we just heard. They put the tooth on the pillow, we swapped it out, and they said, look, Mommy, Daddy, the tooth fairy came. We said, how do you know it was the tooth fairy? And then she thought about it. There's my daughter. She said, oh, no, I don't know. I just know that there's money here. So she started setting up booby traps for the tooth, like crinkly aluminum foil on the ground so she would wake up.
Yeah.
Walked in. She had one of these dream catchers, hoping she could catch the fairy in the dream catcher, but it didn't work. At school, she got together with her friends and said, we think it might be our parents who are doing this.
Yeah.
If it is, whoever's tooth comes out at school, don't tell your parents. Put that tooth under the pillow and see what happens the next day. And it stayed a tooth. So they performed the experiment to demonstrate that the parents are the tooth fairy. And I'm thinking, this is how adults should behave. So Stephen, will we ever have the ability to travel backwards in time? I'm thinking not, simply because if we ever did obtain that ability, we would have met somebody by now from the future.
One might hope that we could warp space-time so that one could go off in a rocket and come back in the past, but I have shown that this is not possible if energy density is always non-negative.
Maybe that's a big if. All we have to do is create negative energy density stuff. Then we'll all be able to travel backwards in time. I watched the Thor movie and I'm saying, how much does that hammer weigh? I heard a sentence in the movie that enabled me to calculate how much his hammer weighed. They say, hammer forged in the heart of a dying star? Oh my gosh, I'm an astrophysicist. We deal in dying stars. I got this. Hide some dense stuff going on in a dying star. Damn. I filled out the density and I tweeted it and I said, if Thor's hammer is made in the way the movie says, it has the weight of a herd of 300 million elephants. That's why nobody could pick it up. The Hulk couldn't pick it up. You need the magical powers of Thor to do it. And then I got out nerded. Somebody said, Dr. Tyson is wrong about this calculation, okay? Yeah. So yeah, I got totally smoked on this one. So what happened was, in 1991, Marvel issued a Thor's Hammer trading card where they said, Thor's Hammer is made of a fictional material, Uru, and it weighs precisely 42.3 pounds. Leeuwenhoek, the microscope guy, he got a drop of pond water, puts it under his microscope, just to think to do this. It's just water. Why do you think that's something interesting to do? He said, I wonder. He was curious. He puts it under and sees little, what he described as animalcules, happily a-swimming.
Animalcules.
Animalcules. These are like the amoebas in Paramecia. He reports on this to scientific authorities, and they don't believe him. They say, Von Leeuwenhoek, we think you might have had too much gin before you wrote this letter. Why would anyone believe this? That there's entire creatures, an entire universe of creatures thriving in a drop of pond water. So the way science works is one report does not make it true. You need verification. They sent people to the Netherlands to verify his results, and there it was, the birth of microscopy. and then they looked at everything. So Stephen, if we ever really develop the technology to upload your brain into some computer, providing life after death, or at least consciousness after death, would you be first to sign up for that?
My body hardly works at all because I have motor neuron disease, otherwise known as ALS, so getting rid of it would be no loss and would spare me discomfort. Being immortal as solely a brain, I could see the future unless I was terminated by someone switching off the computer or by a computer virus.
Why do I slow down as I approach the speed of light?
Now you want to freak out? You know, I don't want your head to explode. You ready? The faster you move, slower
That's
time
what you
ticks
just said, yeah?
for you
Yeah.
as seen by others. As you approach the speed of light, time continues to slow down.
Yes.
At the speed of light, time stops, which means for a photon moving at the speed of light, when it is absorbed in your retina, it is the same instant it was emitted at the Big Bang 14 billion years ago.
That's what I thought.
The photon gets emitted, bam! It's in your, as far as it's concerned, it is in your eye in that same instant.
Can we measure that photon and
Yes.
observe the Big Bang?
I know that came from the Big Bang, and I'm watching it, and it's taken 13.8 billion years to reach you, but if you are that photon, it does not experience that time delay. When we were all in the caves, half of everyone born was dead before the age of 30. Fast forward to 1840, that number went up to 35. Half of everyone born was dead by the time they were 35. So, in the tens of thousands of years between living in caves and the middle of the 19th century,
we only got 5 more
we
years.
got 5 years
Jesus.
on that. By the way, everyone back then was eating organic. Just saying. And the water was clear, the air ran pure, the game was free range. Didn't make a damn bit of difference. Science matters here. You can run around and eat all the organic you want.
Okay.
You'd be dead by the 30 unless some doctor came in and said, we can increase your life expectancy using science. It's about Santa. I said, Santa knows physics. Red light penetrates fog better than any other color.
Yeah.
So Benny, the blue-nosed reindeer, didn't get the gig.
How can you see Santa at this store and at that shopping mall? Because he's magic.
Visit Santa Claus. Santa Claus on the North Pole. And you say, Santa, which way is north? And every direction Santa points is due south. Because on the North Pole, the question, which way is north, has no meaning. You can't even go east.
Every
or
way
west.
you point is south.
Correct. So on the grid that we've all agreed that we use to establish coordinates of Earth, Santa Claus can only go south. We're not made of rare stuff. You know, if we were made of like an isotope of bismuth, then you could argue that this is a rare thing we got going here on Earth, and it's precious, let's not take it for granted. But we're made of carbon and nitrogen and oxygen, and this is like the most common ingredients in the universe. And if biology has an inevitable trajectory of the experimentation that happens naturally on planetary surfaces, then maybe life is inevitable, but is intelligence as we define it inevitable? So these are fascinating questions that require that we relax the bias that we have as being humans on this planet, just to even ask the question in an answerable way, are we alone? In Ramadan, you fast during the day and you get to eat at night. So it's 40 days of fasting, I think 40. Wow. Well, it turns out I was recently in Dubai where they have the tallest building in the world. And I did a quick calculation and I confirmed it with others there that in fact, they print separate tables for residents at the top of this building because the sun sets 2 minutes later if you are at the top of that building than if you are at the base, because you're seeing that much farther over the curvature of the earth. In the day, you could get radio stations from cities that were far away, but you wouldn't get TV stations. TV waves, you have to be in a direct sight line to the television transmitter. So you have to have a transmitter everywhere for TV. So TV was very local in the day. Radio waves, its waves had the right frequency to reflect off the ionosphere of the Earth. It could send a signal beyond Earth's horizon. These modes of communication had leakage, especially television waves. So someone eavesdropping on Earth, and they're, let's say, 80 light years away, you're getting the earliest radio signal that have been emanating from Earth at the speed of light. And then the TV signals would start coming in, early TV, and they'll see the war broadcasts and everything. They get to the 1980s, and signals start disappearing. People are using cable. So a lot of what's happening today is protected from leakage. Do you know the pyramids in Egypt? They stopped building pyramids. I don't know if they ran out of pharaohs to build pyramids to, or they ran out of money. One day they stopped. Do you know
what year we built something taller than that pyramid after that pyramid was built? It was in the Paris Expo. The Eiffel Tower was the first object we ever built as a species taller than the pyramids. So just because you're doing something in one period of time doesn't mean it will continue forever. In fact, my great fears is that you end up taking it for granted.
The most recent space news is that they found another planet and that it's Earth-like.
Yeah, Proxima b. What makes Proxima b interesting is that it's an Earth-like planet orbiting the nearest star to the sun, the Alpha Centauri system. But it's about 4 light years away. A beam of light would take about 4 years to reach it. And so it's the nearest planet. So if you're going to go to planets and you're going to rank them by the one you would want to visit first, it'd be Proxima b.
1 light year is 4 years?
No, if you are riding a beam of light, it would take you 4 years to get there. And a beam of light goes 6 trillion miles in a year.
What is 1 light year equal to?
6 trillion miles.
How long is that?
So if you were traveling as fast as a light beam, and then after a year, you've gone a distance of 1 light year. There's a strong religious tradition to say a prayer before a meal. Why? I ask myself that. And I realized that most of the history of civilization, you really didn't know when your next meal was coming. Food was a cherished commodity. And so if you had food, you were thankful. Nowadays, if you have food, you say, no, I got to go to the gym and work this off. Yeah. You can't pull an orange off the stack in the grocery store without the whole pyramid spilling out onto the ground. America might be the only country with overweight homeless people. Then I thought, if you're going to pray today, what might you pray for if you were to change that ritual to something that was cherished or rare? And I'm thinking, maybe you should pray for yourself to understand objective truths, because that would be the foundations of the advance of civilization.
What's the most mind-blowing thing you can tell me that's true?
In 1 centimeter slice of your lower colon lives and works more microbes than the total number of humans who have ever been born, which means to them, all you are is a darkened vessel of anaerobic fecal matter. Yet we tell ourselves that we're in charge. If you upset those microbes, they're in charge because you know your distance to the nearest toilet. So this is a cosmic perspective of a biological sense, where you want to think you're important and you're not as important as you want to believe you are. However, the ingredients of life itself, the hydrogen, the oxygen, the carbon, the nitrogen, they're forged in the Big Bang and in stars themselves. The fact that we are carrying the elements, we are not just figuratively, but literally stardust. And it's not simply that we are alive in this universe. The universe is alive within us. Just in case you were wondering, in a mirror, you can only kiss yourself on the lips, just saying. We remember a plane would fly overhead in a city and you'd have to halt your conversation until it finished.
Why? What happened?
Engines got quieter and quieter, which enabled people to build real estate closer and closer to airports and not have a sound problem. Shea Stadium in New York City near LaGuardia Airport, the announcers had to stop anytime a plane flew overhead. They couldn't announce the game.
That's crazy.
And when the Mets were in the World Series in 1969, Mayor Lindsay redirected the airport traffic to not fly over the World Series games.
Wow.
I thought that was a badass move of his, Mayor Lindsay.
I completely forgot how loud planes used to be.
Correct.
Do you think that we might just be a simulation of something else?
I wish I had a good argument against that, and I do not. Just start with a real universe. You say, I'm going to program a universe in your computer and give the life forms in there the belief that they have free will. Then those life forms create a universe within their computer, allowing their life forms to think they have free will. And it's computers all the way down. Now you close your eyes and throw a dart. Which of all of these universes are you most likely to hit? Because only one of them is real, and all the rest are simulations. Just the statistics of that tell us we are probably in a simulation. And further evidence for this is some brilliant alien in his parents' basement is programming us, and anytime tranquility descends upon the earth, something comes in to ruin the whole thing. And I think they program that in just to keep them entertained. They'll throw in Brexit, they'll throw in wars, just weird stuff just so that they can watch and be entertained while they eat popcorn. I was told once that anytime peace does break out, it's because they were called for dinner from their parents.
Lightning never strikes the same place twice.
False. That's what lightning rods are for. It can strike the same place twice so that it doesn't have to strike a place you don't know about. Empire State Building struck hundreds of times a year. Plus, there are people who've been hit by lightning more than once. Go tell them. Lightning doesn't strike the same place more than once. Ask them about it. Have them answer.
The speculated birthday of Jesus is is like the spring.
The spring.
Right?
There's some passages, of course, in the New Testament that reference what the sheep were doing. Plus, there's a census being taken by the Romans, and Mary goes to the manger. The animals are not in the manger, not at the. So there's secondary evidence for that's probably happened in the spring. Let me tell you how smart Einstein was. In one of his equations, he put in a term that he later regretted putting in, and he called it his greatest blunder. He looked at his equations, and his equations showed that the universe had to be either expanding or collapsing. No one had any idea that the universe, which is everything, would be doing anything. So he says, this can't be right. Let me put in this term. It's a legitimate mathematical term, but physically, what the hell are you doing, Albert? And he says this term will help stabilize it from collapse. And it's a pressure force to push outward, and that'll stabilize it. Later on, just a couple of years later, Hubble discovered that in fact the universe was expanding, and he didn't need the term because he could have predicted that the universe should either be expanding or contracting, but he didn't. He put in this term. He said it's his biggest blunder. You know what Einstein's actual biggest blunder is? Saying that that was his biggest blunder.
Yeah.
Because in fact, in 1998, we discovered a pressure in the universe pressing against gravity. That is exactly the term that he put in. That's badass smart.
Do you think is the most extraordinary scientific mind that we've, that humanity has produced?
There is no contest. Isaac Newton. Nobody comes close.
Explain what?
He, working alone, discovers the laws of motion. Then he discovers the law of gravity, universal law of gravitation. Oh, and then someone asks, why do your planets orbit in this shape, ellipses, the ovals, rather than perfect circles? It's, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And he goes home, and he comes back, I finally have my answer. And they say, well, Isaac, how did you do that? Well, I had to invent integral and differential calculus to answer that question. He then discovers the laws of optics, deducing that white light is composed of colors, because you could take those same colors, recombine them, and get white light. So he does all of this. Then he turns 26.
Who would be the most scientifically accurate and believable superhero with superhuman abilities in relation to real-world physics and counterpoint the most unbelievable and inaccurate, and why?
The least believable, I'd say the Hulk, come on now.
Is that because he's made from gamma radiation?
Yeah, so first of all, gamma rays will kill you, first of all. Okay? But let's hold that detail aside for the moment. Now, next it would mess with your DNA, okay? So we get that. So here he is turning green. All right, so let's even allow that. He increases in mass and then decreases in mass. If you want to do that, you're converting energy into mass and back again, he would explode wherever he was, the city, whatever. So you can't just get bigger unless he has the same mass. And if he is, then he's less dense in the state of Hulk than he is as Bruce Banner. Have you ever seen off-ramps to freeways? So, off-ramps, have you noticed they have grooves in them?
Yes.
That's to prevent you from sliding off.
Makes sense.
If the road is a little bit slippery because it just rained or whatever. They groove the off-ramp, a curved off-ramp. So you say, who invented those grooves? That's brilliant. It's simple and brilliant. NASA did. Because the space shuttle, which comes in for a landing, does not have engines. It is a glider as it comes in for a landing, and it's got a parachute. It's got some brakes, but it's really got, so if there's a crosswind, that's hard to fight that. So those grooves help it stay on track, because it doesn't matter how you come in, the photo at the end shows how good a steerer you were. So some clever engineers decide if you groove it, then the shuttle can stay on course more tightly, and that was then borrowed for the freeway system. The reason why Voyager had this golden record of human sounds and music was because this is one of the first spacecraft launched with a trajectory that would never return to the solar system at all. And so if it never returns, there's a chance it could be discovered by some alien civilization. And if they do discover it, let it be this emissary of who we are and what we stand for. Not that anybody asked, but the rate that your fingernails grow, that's about the speed that continents drift across Earth's surface. The same. Why is it that Pluto is Mickey's dog, but Mickey is not Pluto's mouse? I was deeply disturbed by this. This is a disruption in the mammalian order of things. I looked this one up. I got Disney consultants. In the Disney pantheon of character, not the ones that they bought later like Winnie the Pooh. I'm talking about ones that they sketched out of their labs. If you're an animal who wears clothes, you can own other animals who don't. Mickey's got the gloves, those balloon pants he wears, whatever those things are. Pluto's butt naked, walks on all fours and barks. Whereas Goofy wears clothes, walks bipedally, pays rent, lives in a house, not a doghouse.
And I know you were burning to know this, but I just had to tell you. I foresee the day where AI becomes so good at making a deep fake that the people who believed fake news as true will no longer think their fake news is true because they'll think their fake news was faked by AI. The day that happens, the entire role of the internet as a source of objectively true information will implode. And that will be the death of the internet as that source, like 1992 to 2028, whatever. Rest in peace. And the internet will return to just cat videos. Remember when we just would entertain each other with videos? Because AI would be so good at faking news. December 21st, the sun slows down and it stops this drop in its movement across the sky from day to day. So that stopping of the sun is solstice. That's Latin, the stationary sun, like armistice, stationary arms, right, from the end of the First World War. It takes a few days for it to slow down, stop, and then reverse. You say, oh, it is coming back. Let's celebrate that. And that's a few days after December 21st. It's about December 25th, a pagan holiday celebrating the return of the sun. Christianity is trying to take foothold where pagans once roamed. And you put celebrations that match theirs just so that the shift is not as hard for you. And the unknown birthday of Jesus was then assigned this pagan day of celebration to make that transition easier for the pagans to become Christians. And sure enough, it remained Christmas Day.